Okay, it's 6:30. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education. It's a special meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 22nd, and we're meeting remotely via Google Meet and conference calls. Could you call the roll, Katie?
Ms. Garrison? Mr. Maring?
Here.
Ms. Flanagan?
Present.
Mr. Pankratz?
Here.
Ms. Bijak?
Here.
Mr. LeBrun?
Here.
Mr. Zach?
Present. Present, and Heather's here. Hear me okay, Heather? Heather, can you hear me? Okay. We'll go. Anyway, I've got shown proof of notice of meeting from Katie, and that will be with Katie if anyone wishes to inspect it. The agenda tonight contains two items. One is the opening of school update. That will be an information session. We'll get a report from Dr. Bergstrom. Then the board will meet in closed session. This is a carryover from our last meeting. We didn't get to it because of the length of time. Discuss our evaluation process of Dr. Bergstrom. So I need a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
So moved. This is Troy.
Anna, I was second Troy's.
Hey, Steve, you're having some connection issues, I think.
Yep. Looks like he's froze up.
Am I back? Katie, can you hear me?
Voice is back.
Yep, you're back, Steve.
Yeah, I'm having connection problems. Am I back now?
We can hear you now.
Yes, you are.
Okay, sorry about that. I just had a kind of a weird phase here. So I turned off my photo, so we've got that. So I was looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Did we get that?
Yep, we've got a motion from Troy and a second from Anna.
Okay, all in favor, or call the roll then?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Maring?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Zach?
Okay, we've got an approved agenda. First item is comments received from the public regarding agenda items. Just to reemphasize a couple of things. Number one, because of we're working remotely, that the requirement of the board for communications from the public is to submit those to Katie Heights before 4 o'clock on the day of the meeting, and the comment should be 250 words or less. We read them in the order in which they are received. And so I think we have 17 of them, and Chris and I have decided that we'll split those up. I'll go first. Did I miss anything, Chris, in terms of introduction on these? You can do
No,
it.
just that we want to make sure that people email those to Katie and let people know that we did receive comments as the board, but it's because some people don't like their comments read in public comment, but just want the board to receive those messages. So if we made that an error, that's the reason. And so if you do want them read at a board meeting, those go to Katie.
Okay, so I'm going to start. I just wanted to write on behalf of my family, 3 kids in the district at 3 different schools, to voice our support for the plan that the administration and school board have developed and plan to implement based on PHMDC statistics and guidelines related to the safe reopening and phased restart of in-person education. Safety to the students, educators, staff, and administration is paramount to any level of education that some people in the community think needs to happen immediately. Without our health as a community There won't be anyone to educate, and we believe that is vitally important to stick to the plan based on health data and safety protocols. We know that there's a vocal minority in the community that think we should just reopen all the schools immediately for various reasons. That minority are speaking with more emotion than they are facts. And in a case like this, we feel that removing emotion from the equation is necessary to come to the safest options for returning to in-person education. Please voice our desire for the board and administration to stand strong with their plan and not be swayed by the emotion-fueled minority that believe we should reopen based on other factors. Stick to the plan. Happy holidays and thank you and the rest of district employees for working so hard through this crazy life we're dealing with. And it's the Jockman family, Mike, Alexa, Andrew, and Brooke. I would like to voice my strong support for live competition and a return to winter sports for the record with the school board. We have been competing as a club throughout fall and winter without incident, and the rest of the state is competing. There is zero reason our kids should not be allowed to compete as well. Sincerely, Jeff Rohrer. Hello, we are the Crow family and have a junior girls basketball player. We are in favor of girls basketball practice and games with COVID protocols like masks during games practices. Please consider talking about and authorizing the start of girls basketball game schedule at your school board meeting 12/22. Thank you very much for all you do to keep student athletes safe. Jesse, Amy, and Emily Crow. My name is Miranda Bush, and I'm writing in regards to the upcoming start of winter sports, specifically basketball. As a parent to two high school boys basketball players, I'm asking that the board and district allow basketball competitions to be scheduled outside of Dane County for the 2021 season. In respect of time, I will not send you repetitive studies that speak on the low amount of risk associated with young people contacting and spreading COVID-19, but they are there, and many other districts in the conference have been competing outside of the county for months without issue. We fully support competitions and hope you will consider it as an option. Thank you so much for your time and all you do. Miranda Bush and family. Dr. Bergstrom and the Oregon School District Board. During tonight's meeting, I would like three things addressed. When will in-person board meetings resume so the public can begin participating real time again? There is plenty of space to accommodate in the high school cafeteria, as evidenced back in September when the last in-person meeting was held. Please explain why the middle school and high school have to wait until 1/19/21 to come back on a hybrid schedule. The 7th, 8th grade and the 9, 12 grade are separate schools with separate teachers. If the teachers are given a month to prepare and only 35% of the students will be back on any given day, assuming 70% requested to come back on the hybrid plan from the updated survey, proper spacing can be maintained. These students are more than capable of following masking and social distancing. When will the students be back for full 5 days a week in person school this year? What benchmarks are you using to return to full in-person school? Considering all the benefits lost for students held away from their teachers and classmates for the last 9 months, we would like a clear plan for returning to a regular school schedule. Now that all the experts agree schools are essential and safe and the numbers in Wisconsin have dropped significantly, we need to get our kids back to their regular school routines. Malia King. Hello, Oregon School District Board. I'm aware that there is conflicting opinions about how to go about with winter sports now with Order 11 issued. While being able to practice in small group is certainly an improvement, I know I would graciously appreciate the opportunity to play games, if at all possible. Jack Kreckman, Oregon High School sophomore. Hello, Oregon School District Board. I'm very grateful that we are able to practice in small groups, but if it's possible, I would really like to play games as well. Henry Kreckman, high school freshman. Equity, it is a word used by OSD administration more frequently than achievement or education. OSD's recalcitrance toward allowing students to return to in-person education has exacerbated the equity gap. According to a December 8 report by McKinsey and Company, an analysis of achievement tests past fall found students learned only 60% of math and 80% of reading that grade level peers would typically have learned by the fall, indicating students lost the equivalent of 3 months of learning in mathematics and 1.5 months of learning and reading. McKinsey also found Black and Hispanic students are twice as likely as white students to have received no live contact with teachers over the previous week and are 3 to 6 percentage points less likely to be receiving consistent live instruction. McKinsey notes the pandemic has prompted students to leave the public school system altogether. As we have seen here in Oregon, parents who can afford it have switched their children to homeschooling private schools or schools outside of Dane County. Parents with the means and resources have sought athletic opportunities like baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, and wrestling outside of Dane County, or purchased memberships at gyms and dance studios. Families who depend on the Oregon School District for athletic and arts programs outside the classroom have suffered due to Oregon School District's foot dragging. Equity doesn't come from reading a book or hiring the Nehemiah Project. Equity is giving all students the opportunity to achieve their best. Bring kids back now and provide them the best education you can. Robert P. Palmer. Hello, OSD Board. I am writing to express my interest in having our sophomore athlete have the option for live competitions in the upcoming winter sports season. We have been participating in our winter sport wrestling through club up to this point, and it's been proven that this can be conducted safely with the appropriate protocols in place, respectively. Chad Naday, sophomore parent. My family is excited about the opportunity to have kids return to winter sports on January 4th. We ask that you strongly consider allowing these student athletes the opportunity to compete against teams outside of Dane. We fully understand that there are increased safety measures that need to be put in place, but we feel that much of this may be accomplished while allowing kids to compete in OHS winter sports. We have 2 children currently enrolled in OHS that anxiously await your leadership, Clint and Sarah Kreckman. Dear OSD Board, it is past time that we factor our students' emotional and physical health in decisions and act. I'm writing to plead with you to allow our winter athletes to participate in competitions, games versus just small group. Although I don't have a student with a high school winter sport, I have witnessed a change in my daughter with sports and other social events canceled. It has negatively impacted her physically, emotionally, and with her classwork. We are fortunate to participate in club soccer in the fall, and our team played every one of our games and had 0 cases and never had to shut down to quarantine. My daughter's now participating in club volleyball and small group with scheduled tournaments to start in January. Her overall physical and emotional health has improved dramatically with simply adding practices and allowing her to interact with her friends in a normal setting. We need to figure out how to get our kids back to school, sports, and living life. It is no longer acceptable to do nothing and continue to watch our children be negatively impacted because the adults in their lives aren't willing to start the process. Will you have to make changes? Probably. Will it be worth it? Without question. Please start the process and get our kids back in class and on the courts. They deserve better from us. Regards, Stacy Charles. And Krista, that's about time because my voice is going.
I applaud the Oregon School District's decision to begin winter sports and organize small group workouts beginning January 4th. However, we must do more for our student athletes. I'm asking the school board to authorize and empower winter sports coaches to begin organizing and participating in competitions against other schools immediately with the start of the winter sports season. Students from nearby school districts, including many in the Badger Conference, are already competing. Since the beginning of the school year, school districts throughout Wisconsin have proven that student athletes can participate in athletic competitions in a safe manner. I've watched several high school basketball games streamed over the internet recently and was impressed with the safety measures taken. All players, coaches, and officials wear masks, and appropriate distancing is maintained by players while on the sidelines. Games can be played outside of Dane County while existing public health Madison-Dane County restrictions are in place. Edgewood High School has been doing this since the beginning of the school year. Wanakee, DeForest, and McFarland schools recently voted to authorize winter sports competitions outside of Dane County as well. Oregon students deserve the opportunity to compete, and you can authorize them to do so. Coaches are supportive of playing and student athlete participation is voluntary. There really is no valid reason for our student athletes to be deprived of the opportunity to compete. Please vote to let them play. Terry Taylor. I am the parent of a boys basketball player. My son has invested many years of time and energy into this sport, 100% within the Oregon community. It is a huge detriment to his physical and mental well-being to miss out on basketball. I believe that the negative aspects of not playing far outweigh the risks of playing, particularly after so many months of inactivity. I'm also confident with the rigorous safety protocols available. Sincerely, John Schuett. Dear School Board Medical Working Group and District Administration, thank you for taking many circumstances into account as you continue to make decisions that are in the best interests of our students, teachers, and staff, support staff in the Oregon School District. Please continue to place a strong focus on equity by centering marginalized students in upcoming decisions for in-person learning. Inequities in the Oregon School District vary from family to family, and the pandemic has exacerbated these situations for many. Currently, the phased-in plan permits all students in the district to access in-person learning. We recognize some families need access to in-person learning more than others. While we do not expect a public school to deny anybody in-person learning, we are specifically asking you to consider closely the unique needs of marginalized students and be methodical in the manner in which students are brought back into the building. For example, can the phase-in process include a period of time in which marginalized students return before their larger cohort? Below, we've identified need-based solutions and situations in our district where students may hesitate to phase in with large groups of learners, but who could benefit the most from in-person learning and interaction. 1, underprivileged and lower income students with less access to resources, children of essential workers whose parents are already more at risk, children and families who are experiencing homelessness, students with IEPs or 504 plans who will need a gradual reentry into buildings in order to feel safe, students with anxiety, ADHD, depression, and other mental health issues, English language learners. Because these students' needs are sometimes forgotten when we must make decisions for everybody, we ask that you prioritize the mental, emotional, and physical health of marginalized students by choosing a phase-in option that accommodates them before bringing in too many students at once. We also encourage you to continue valuing the input from student support services regarding the time they need to follow up with students. We are concerned that this proposed schedule can reduce the time that they can spend with students. Thank you for considering transitioning vulnerable students to in-person learning first. Please proceed with care for all of our community. Thank you, the Oregon Allies Leadership Board. Andrea Bilo, Jennifer Benrafa, Karen Davidson, Ashley Disrude, Coral Rose Joplin, Christy Halverson, Melissa Kingsley, Dana Kubernutz, Ildi Martinfee, Kylie Ogadugu, Amanda Peterson, Kelly Petrie, Molly Vidal, Mindy Willard. 284 days have passed since high school sports came to an abrupt halt. School as we know it changed drastically because of COVID. 284 days. For any student, 284 days feels like an eternity. I was thrilled to receive an email announcing that basketball would start practicing on January 4th. As I read further, it referenced that games would not start until Dane County allows competition, which is January 13th. That sounds great, but Dane County continues to extend or create new orders the day before the current one expires. Most would agree we can expect the same come mid-January, meaning that sports will still be banned for the duration of the season. Many area schools have made alternative arrangements to allow for winter sports, and the majority of the state is playing. School boards are involved in making difficult decisions during these difficult times. The DeForest School Board voted unanimously to allow sports to start up again just yesterday. I urge you to work with our athletic director, get input from players, parents, and coaches, and come to a consensus and vote to have winter sports. Studies have shown very limited increase of cases being attributed to playing sports, most notably the UW study. Multiple studies have shown how beneficial high school sports are for social, emotional, and physical health. Isn't 284 days long enough for our students to lose something in their lives that they love and that is healthy for them? Respectfully, Chris and Sonia Patterson. Oregon School District Board members, our family is writing to you today to request consideration for approving a winter sports season option outside of Dane County, which would provide our Oregon girls basketball team the ability to compete against other schools and be eligible for the WIAA tournament in late February, early March. From what we've seen on social media, other Dane County schools have approved, Marshall, Wanakee, DeForest, Edgewood, or are considering this option, and seeing other conference and area teams playing their season safely is heartbreaking for our girls to watch unfold, knowing they are not getting the same opportunity to compete. This is especially painful considering how last season was prematurely cut short just prior to their state tournament appearance in 40 years. From what we've seen, COVID-19 statistics in Dane County and the rest of the state are trending in the right direction, and we feel strongly the girls can still have some semblance of a season and do so safely. Therefore, we respectfully request this option to be considered and voted on during tonight's school board meeting, as tonight may be one of the last chances to do so and still have a season. Thank you, Mark Dawn and Ellie Koopman. Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. The Wauwatosa School Board unanimously voted for students in grades K-5 to return to in-person learning 5 days a week. This is a headline I saw today online. What struck me about the article is that the school board voted on this critical issue. I cannot understand why our board will not vote to approve the in-person learning policy. Since OSD was formed in 1850, the district has offered in-person instruction for 170 continuous years. This is the first year the school district has not offered in-person instruction for the majority of the students, yet the board has decided, for reasons I cannot understand, not to vote on this issue. I believe it is unfair to put this much responsibility on the superintendent to make this critical decision alone. I call on the board to review the superintendent's proposal and put your name on the record as approve or disapprove. Respectfully, Steve Kaya. Dear Dr. Bergstrom and School Board, I am writing today about a topic that was mentioned last night during the medical working group. It is something that has been talked about by teachers' unions around the country as their biggest concern: teacher safety if teachers are required to return to the classroom. Dr. Bergstrom, Tim, Kevin, I know you were in the breakout session I observed. In it, Dr. Katie Schmidt, a noted psychiatrist from our community, raised the issue. She basically said, "This is hard. Fear is debilitating. We should not foster fear in our staff. We must move forward with kids at the center of our focus." Teachers are essential. In fact, teachers are as essential as our healthcare workers and grocery clerks. Essential workers do not have the luxury of saying that they are concerned about returning to work. They are offered two choices: work or explore other options. Why are teachers treated differently? They are even more important to the future of our country. Certainly, there are extenuating circumstances for which accommodations must be made. We need to help the rest of the teachers get back into the classroom and provide for their safety. The data and experiences of nearby schools have shown that it can be done and done successfully. As a district, we must move forward with kids at the center of our focus. That means finding a way to offer all the kids the choice to return at the start of the second semester. Sincerely, Kim Palmer, Oregon parent.
And that is all the correspondence that we received pursuant to the protocol established in our agenda. So I want to thank everybody for submitting those to us and expressing your thoughts to the board. It's greatly appreciated. That takes us to item B on our agenda for this evening, and this is opening of the school update, next steps for phased restart. We discussed this at our last meeting on December 14th, we knew that we were having surveys come back on the 18th and that the medical working group was convening on the 21st. So we scheduled this meeting, which is a special meeting of the board, for purposes of hearing Dr. Bergstrom report back on what she learned from that and the plan moving forward in terms of the phased restart. So Dr. Bergstrom, with that introduction, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'll talk briefly about what we will discuss in an update tonight. And first, it will be about the phased restart status, excuse me, in the semester 2 plan, an update from the work of our medical working group, the supports we're offering for our students, what we need to be able to do to work together to stay in school, and then action plans or action steps that we have that are critical to getting into school safely and staying there. So now we will proceed. And as always, our goal is to get our students back in school. And we have a plan to share with you tonight on how we want to make that happen. So as many of you know, last Monday night, Public Health gave us some updated guidance. And in that updated guidance, they said that they believe the schools can operate safely as long as they're using the proper safety measures, and they use a phased approach, beginning with elementary schools first. Now, what's really important to note is that this doesn't mean that we are loosening anything related to our safety measures. As a matter of fact, the reason that students are able to be in school and not contribute to community spread is the fact that we have the strong measures in place. So when you're thinking about our plan, when you are considering how the plan impacts you or your family, please know that we will be utilizing the strongest safety measures possible. So in order to prepare for this evening and ensure we had a plan for re-entry into in-person instruction that was well supported by medical expertise, we sent some questions to the medical working group, which is comprised, as you know, of 15 professionals, actually 17 professionals, who, other than our data analysts, other than that group, are associated with the medical profession. And they are able to give us their expertise related to our specific questions. So we asked the medical working group 4 questions last night, and I'll go through the first 3. The fourth was related to winter sports, so I'll get to that a little bit later in the update tonight. But the first question we posed our working group professionals was here on the screen: given your area of expertise, what are the benefits and detriments of phasing in grades 3 through 6 on January 19th, which is 15 days post the return from winter break? Do you think it's prudent to begin the next phase on this date? Why or why not? Well, we separated into 2 groups in order to ensure there was enough time for every professional to contribute to questions as they saw fit. And in those 2 groups, the theme highlights, because there were many really important things that were shared, but the highlights is that 14 days post winter break is an appropriate spacing, as it allows for us to monitor any spread that may have occurred over the holidays. And so that 14 days is actually of benefit in our plan. And they also mentioned that it is important to give families enough time to plan, because there are daycare arrangements and such for the younger grades, and families need time to be able to figure out some of those complicated logistics, particularly when we're talking about a plan that doesn't include everybody in every single day, because we need to be able to keep the safety precautions that have allowed us to be successful thus far with K2. Another thing that the group said is just be very cognizant of the data that is, what the story is for the community and the rest of the county. Just because public health no longer has specific metrics associated with opening and closing, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be paying very close attention to what's happening in our community. And another thing they recommended we pay very close attention to is the transitions. As students are moving from grades 4 to 5, and for our students, that means a new school. 6 to 7 is a new school, and 8 to 9. So we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. The second question that was posed to the group of medical professionals is related to when it is appropriate to close a school or an individual classroom, and what factors might dictate a temporary move to virtual instruction. Public health has recommendations related to this, and we were wondering, based on what the medical group could provide us, if there were other factors that should be considered. So the theme highlights from this particular question, as you can see, that it was very strong on following the recommendations of public health, the ones that they gave us related to classroom and school closures. Make every attempt possible to limit the back and forth between in-person and virtual models. And many of us have seen that in districts surrounding the county, where there's been a bit of back and forth based on factors that are very complicated. But the medical working group cautioned us against that, and tried to emphasize the importance of consistency and how important that was to the students. And then, of course, this group, even though they're a group of medical professionals, they very quickly picked up on the fact that there is a potential staffing concern. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, the challenges we face and how we are rising and conquering those challenges. In addition to that, once again, there was just a lot of emphasis on ensuring that we're keeping track of everything that's happening and following public health. The third question: with the concern for health and safety of our students, staff, and community, what should be the minimum amount of time between phasing in different grade bands? Because while public health recommends a phased approach, they didn't give guidance as to how much time should be between those phases. So the clear highlights from the group on this was really that there wasn't a clear consensus because there isn't a lot of research on this. So what was clear is that we needed to monitor the impact of COVID between the phases. And the group had a lot of suggestions for phase-in considerations, such as the grade levels that went first, et cetera. So we'll talk a little bit about why we decided what we decided, but the suggestions were creative and thoughtful and very much based on wanting to do the best for kids. And I think we'll move on then to what we're actually proposing. So what the administrative team is putting forward to you regarding phased restart is that our students in grades 3 through 5 and our students in grade 6 transition back to in-person learning on January 19th. Now, we already put forward to our families in these grades that this was the date that we were planning for, unless public health guidance, which we hadn't received at the time we sent the letter to families, unless public health guidance told us something different. So this is the date that families have begun to plan for, and it's a date that we feel that is very appropriate because it gives us the amount of time post-winter break that was recommended from the medical working group. So this is January 19th would be the date we'd bring in that group of students. And remember, they're coming in half-day cohorts, AM cohort or PM cohort. And we have approximately at this point, 25% of our families are opting into Oregon Online. We still have a number of calls to make, although I'd say our administrative team is really making great progress on the list of families who didn't fill out the survey on their preference. But thus far, it looks like it'll be around 25%. And then after we start them in school and we go through 2 weeks of time, a little over that, we'll be at the time to bring in grades 7 through 12. And that will be the in-person, the flipped model of instruction that Mr. Pliner and Dr. Anderson have described for the board on a couple of occasions. And we would bring them 7 through 12 in on that date. However, remember that they'll be coming in small groups. We're expecting class sizes, because we must maintain the 6 feet of physical distancing, we're expecting class sizes to be 10 to 12. So our students will have an experience that is very safe because we'll be able to keep distance, and we are requiring masks, which of course is a requirement to be able to move forward in this manner. And we're very excited. The class size will be a good one to allow for individual student attention. And that is part of the reason for the selection of the flipped model, is because we believe it allows us a level of responsiveness. Now, I think another thing that's very important to note is that it does mean that there will be changes. Teachers are teaching throughout the day, either their phased restart students, or I'm talking 7-12 here, or their Oregon Online students. So while students will get more small group time, I know there are some students who have enjoyed some individual conferencing, and there's certainly less time in the schedule for some of those things. However, this is our next step, certainly not our final, but our next step toward having our students in the building with their teachers in a somewhat more normal fashion. Although it certainly is an adjustment from what they're going through now or what they're experiencing now. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're helping them with that adjustment. In addition, Oregon Online will be maintained throughout the semester. And it's curious to note, while overall as a district, we're staying relatively the same for Oregon Online and phased restart, at the high school right now, and we still have some phone calls to make, so we don't know how it'll play out overall. But right now we had, I don't know, over 100 additional students move from phased restart to online. I just thought that was an interesting notation when I was looking at the numbers today. So this is a change. And this is a change not only from what they have been experiencing so far this school year, but it's also a change from how they have experienced school in the past. And being in such small groups, wearing masks, keeping physical distance, school will feel differently. And so we think it's really important to put a special focus on the emotional aspect of transitioning to semester 2. So there are many things that we are putting in place to ensure we're meeting the needs of the students, not just during our virtual learning time, but also as we're transitioning in. And you can see from the graphic that there are a lot of things that have been in place thus far, including a tremendous effort from our student services staff to stay in touch with our students and to provide virtual counseling sessions and virtual small group sessions, and the support, of course, of our special education teachers. And we also have students that are working to support one another related to mental health needs through the Hope Squad. So there have been a lot of important measures of support, social emotional support, coming from the Student Services Department for our students. We've also been very cognizant of the resources that are necessary to ensure our students are experiencing success in this environment, and they are services that we want to continue with, because we know that that is important as we transition to the next phase of bringing students back toward a more normal school day. And that is a continuation of the free breakfast and lunch programs, the food delivery programs, which, as we've said in the past, are serving 1,000 meals at breakfast and at lunch every day. Internet connection will remain important for our students, and we will continue to provide that for the families who require it. And of course, all the assistance that's come from Friends of Oregon School District related to the needs that I've just mentioned and related to the cost for providing internet. There's also been significant outreach to our students and quite a few check-ins. We've discussed our surveys, our well checks, our screeners, and of course the daily check-ins that happen in the classrooms at the elementary level. And then as far as educational support, you can see that there, once again, have been many things that have been put into place. And we know that all of the things you're seeing here on the screen will play a role as students are transitioning back to a different model, because the difference will be something that I think everybody will take a little bit of time to get used to. Now, the medical working group had a lot of advice, and as I mentioned previously, one piece of advice was to continue to monitor what was happening within our community, that we shouldn't just turn away and from what's happening, but continue to have the pulse on that. And it was noted by one of the doctors, continuing to have a pulse on the emerging research and continue to monitor the new strain of virus that has emerged in other parts of the world. So this is a situation where we will continue to monitor and not just look away from the metrics as they exist. So as you can see here, this is what Dane County put out on December 17th, and this is in addition to an updated 14-day average of 215 cases. So while that is still high, it's down considerably from the highest point a few weeks ago. And you can also see the communities that have had a significantly higher rate of cases overall in Dane County. And I'm pleased to say that we are not on this list. So one of our municipalities is not on this list for the first time in a while, and that's great to see. Now, as we're getting to come back together in school, we're starting to be able to have face-to-face time with our students, time where students are learning in our classrooms with our teachers. That's a very important piece. There's instruction that's happening. Students may be experiencing a lot of new, taking in new information at home, but when they're back with the teachers, that's when they get to really chew on that information, right? And be able to have an opportunity to analyze it, to synthesize the information, to ask questions. This is the heart of teaching and learning, and we're excited to be able to do that in person. But to be able to do that, we all have responsibilities. We all have to be able to work together to ensure we're keeping the school the safe place we've been able to keep it for our K-2 students. And that means students and families before school every day, there's a daily home screening checklist, and we're asking please to stay home if you have any of the symptoms on the checklist or a fever of 100 degrees or higher. We're also asking that students bring a backpack to carry their items because lockers won't be used As you know, if you've been into a school at any time, you'll know that lockers are very close together. And so we will do everything we can to not utilize those at this time. And then we're asking students to bring in water bottles for individual filling stations, as opposed to students using the drinking fountains that have been in place in the past. For our students and our staff, after we are back together and spending in-person time at our schools, we know that the safety protocols are critical, so we will be requiring masks for everyone and keeping 6 feet of distance, because this is another requirement. And remember, that is one of the requirements that makes it so that we are attending in cohorts or in groups, as opposed to everybody all in every day. We are not sharing supplies, and we're taking, of course, the frequent hygiene breaks. And I'm hoping that all of these precautions also decreases the number of colds and flus that people experience this school year. And should an exposure or positive case occur, and we absolutely expect that there will be positive cases within our staff and within our students, because that occurs now. What we're trying to make sure doesn't happen is transmission at school. But when there is a positive case, we have all the right processes and protocols in place, and we've been utilizing them thus far for our learning hubs and for our K2 and 4K students who are in person. So the next step in working together to ensure that now that we have dates for bringing students into school, how do we make sure that we are working together to keep them there? So there are essential safety precautions, and one of those things are our cohort assignments in 4K through grade 6, meaning the number of students that students will be with on a regular basis is extremely limited. Small groups, really classes no larger than 12. And that is allowing us to ensure that physical distance and ensure that students aren't exposed to so many people throughout the school day that if someone became ill, we'd have to close multiple sections. Now, for the older students in grades 7 through 12, they have group assignments, and the group assignments are, of course, parts of the alphabet, so they are much, much larger. And because of the choice that students make in courses, and because of the licensing requirement for teachers, and they teach a subject as opposed to teaching an entire grade level like the elementaries, because of that, it's important we all remember that students in the grade 7 through 12 will change classrooms. So they will be exposed to more than just the 12 students that are in their class, similar to our younger students. They will be moving in the hallways, and we will be doing everything possible to ensure that the hallways are safe places to be and students are keeping their distance. But it's not the same as the younger grades where they are together with one small group all day. We're also working to continuously enhance our ventilation and air filtration system. We have the highest confidence in what we have in place right now. However, we're always on the lookout for ways to continue to make it better. We are modifying our traffic flows, and most importantly, our entrances. So for the families who selected phased restart, there will be different entrances at the 4K 8 level for different grades. So you'll be getting specific instructions related to which door your student goes, enters the school or exits the school. We also have a dedicated illness isolation room, which is a part of the requirements from public health. We have been making classroom preparations, and this is important to note. Like, for instance, RCI already has all of their classrooms set so that teachers don't have to go in and worry about moving furniture or anything of that nature. The classrooms are set up already for the 6 feet of distancing. And we know that it is time to begin that process for the middle school and high school also. Of course, we have increased cleaning and disinfecting procedures for high touch areas. More safety and signage is particularly helpful with the younger students to have things on the ground that shows them how far apart 6 feet is. And we're limiting non-essential visitors because we're trying to make sure that our students aren't exposed to more people than they have to be. And transportation, we've spoken about this a little before also, but because we are now bringing in more students, we will have to modify our bus routes, the capacity of the buses, and the drop-off and pickup locations. So you can expect updated transportation information. Once students are on the bus, it's still our goal to have a bus supervisor for each route. Of course, we are requiring face coverings on the bus. And we are, our goal is 1 student per seat unless they are siblings. And we will be keeping windows open to ensure better ventilation. And as we've mentioned before, self-transport is terrific, but we know that's just not something that can be done by every family given the work schedules. So that's why we will make sure that there is transportation available for all of our students. Excuse me. Now, as part of an action step related to expanding our phased in, the number of students who are phasing into school and how we prepare for it. We discussed this before, but I want to underscore it just a little bit. And that is that we really need to have additional substitutes and paraprofessionals to assist us in this effort. And I spoke last week of the fact that we recently did a survey and we currently have 22 people within our sub pool who are willing to work in person. Some of those 22 are currently have jobs in other districts, so it's not even really a full 22. So we definitely plan, we are asking the community for help. We'll do it more formally in an email to families coming out soon, but that's part of our larger plan for sub recruitment, which is really a very important piece because every single district in the state of Wisconsin is trying to do the exact same thing right now because they are all facing the same situations. And I just want to be real clear about what the situation is so people understand what it is, but also what we are doing to overcome that challenge. For example, we pulled absences of staff illness or family illness between January and March for 2019 and 2020. Then we looked at daily averages related to how many staff members were out of the classroom for personal illness or family illness during each day. And we are averaging during that time period between 20 to 25 teacher absences per day. Now, what I'm hoping is the fact that we are taking all of these safety precautions like increased hygiene procedures and masks, that we will have a lower cold and flu season. However, we are asking staff members to stay home if they're exhibiting symptoms of any kind that are on the checklist. And we also know that there will be staff members who are in quarantine. So I think that we will be needing more than the 20 to 25 absences that were common in the past. Now, the good news is that if people are well, for instance, if they are in quarantine, but they are feeling well, then they are able to live stream into their classroom. And we simply need another adult there to monitor that classroom, and the instruction will come from the teacher via the live stream. However, there still are times when teachers are actually sick and they can't teach. And so we need people who are also able to continue with the instruction. So as part of our plan to move forward, we're definitely taking the advice that is offered from people who are commenting interesting perspectives such as simplification of the application process, or perhaps more money per day or per hour for the substitutes. All of those things are part of our sub recruitment plan. But there are other things that we are doing too. For instance, recently one of our principals made a video to show what our K2 safety procedures look like, so that all of our colleagues who teach other grades can have a visual as to what the day looks like as they're preparing for when their students will be there. And the phrase throughout the video was all hands on deck. Well, that's really the case for what's happening with our subs too. It really will be people who work in the district but aren't assigned a teaching duty that will be all hands on deck to ensure coverage of classrooms. And that means that people who aren't normally teaching will be working in the classrooms when it is necessary. Our last resort will be asking our teachers to cover for other teachers during their prep period. While teachers have done that many times and very graciously in the past, we know that this is the third model of instruction in less than a year. And so we'd really like to ask them to do that the least amount of time possible because of the expectation we're putting on them regarding all that they need to take care of, our online students and our in-person students and the multiple pieces that go with that. There will be times when we don't have an available adult and we'll ask students whose classroom teacher cannot be there. The students will be asked to be in the cafeteria and they'll be working supervised in larger spaced out groups. Now, I don't believe that will happen often, but I don't want to say that could never happen, because if we really only have 22 subs, and unless we're very successful in our sub recruitment plan, and I certainly hope we will be, and we're planning to, and we are doing everything we can to make it so. But there will be days when we don't have enough people to cover illness and we have to think very creatively. And I just want to make sure that that's out there. But the good news is we are thinking creatively and we're coming up with plans, and we are getting ready to do whatever is necessary to have our kids stay in school once they are in school. And then of course, our increased nursing time begins on January 19th. To assist with contact tracing. So as far as what we're doing right now, action steps to plan for all of this to happen, our principals and their administrative assistants are working very hard to contact families who did not complete the selection form. They're assigning or adjusting K2 grade cohorts, because there are some families who went from phased restart to Oregon Online and the other way. So there are some students who are experiencing a teacher change in order to accommodate that request. We are assigning our students in grades 3 through 6 to their AM and PM cohorts. We're coordinating schools with each school to ensure that we're keeping siblings in the same AM or PM cohort, unless parents have requested that we do otherwise. And our administrators in grades 7 through 12 are finalizing their alphabetical grade groups. Our transportation department is creating the bus routes. And then the week of January 4th is when we're communicating to families their AM or PM cohort assignment and logistical information that's critical to them, so that they know what is happening and what they can expect. So as I had mentioned previously, the medical working group emphasized the importance of us thinking about transitions. And thankfully, we have a very competent student services group that's already been thinking about this quite a bit. So we have a lot of transitions ahead for our students who are switching educational modes, potentially switching teachers. There'll be new students in the classrooms due to all of this, and there's definitely a change in classroom dynamic. In addition to the fact that people are, in some cases, they have changed schools and haven't had the opportunity to be in the schools. So I wanted to talk for just a moment about what we are planning to do about that. So for action steps, we are planning for family contacts between teachers and families that are new to their classroom. So if your child is making a teacher switch because they're switching modes, then you can expect that the teacher of the new classroom your child is joining is reaching out to you to make that connection. And as a matter of fact, as an example of how this can be extraordinarily effective is really what the middle school is working on. For the first time in a long time this year, the middle school staff in their connections groups met with students and families to be able to get the year off on a really good personal connection foot. The meetings were virtual, but it led to feedback that indicated parents felt like they were on the team. They felt connected to what was happening in the classroom. The feedback from families and from teachers was extraordinarily positive regarding that conference before school started. Well, because of that really great feedback from families, and because this next phase is a really critical phase that involves a lot of change, our middle school teachers would once again like to offer those conferences to our families for the 2 days prior to students phasing in on February 8th, 2 school days. We would, of course, offer asynchronous instruction during that time, but the teachers would be able to schedule these meetings with families and talk about their thoughts and their goals for their children and help with that transition. Because not only is the middle school new for the 7th graders, but the 8th graders haven't been there in quite a while. And so I think that trying out as a pilot that what we're referring to as Ready, Set, Go conferences for the second time at the middle school is a great example of the outreach from student to teacher. We're also preparing orientation activities for students in the new buildings, and those activities will start far before their transition. Our student services groups are working on lessons currently to ensure that students have an opportunity to talk about the emotions involved in all of these transitions and to get ready for what's ahead of them. And I really appreciate the letter that spoke about ensuring that we're thinking about our students from marginalized groups in this process, because that is definitely one of our priorities, is thinking through how to make sure that all of our students have the opportunity to feel comfortable in their new groups. So there are teams at each school who are working through those processes. And of course, we're focusing in on social emotional learning and building relationships. That's been the focus all year. That was evident in the surveys and the results from the surveys. And a lot has been done over the course of this school year to ensure that we are putting the focus on what our students need related to their mental health and their social emotional learning, because that's really the foundation of everything else. And that focus will continue as students transition into the next phase of normal. Now, the next piece is regarding winter sports. And there's a lot of information that I'll be sharing with you. These 3 bullets are really just the very, very high level information. And just as a reminder for people who aren't familiar, winter sports consists of boys and girls basketball, wrestling, boys and girls hockey, boys swimming. I'm sure Mr. Carr will correct me in a moment if I've forgotten anybody. And while emergency order number 10 postponed the start of the season, if you remember, back in mid-November, emergency order number 11, which went into effect last week on Wednesday, allows us to resume practices. And that's why we're very excited that on January 4th, we will be resuming winter sports practices, and the athletes have received information on this from their coaches. And just momentarily, I would like to ask Mr. Carr to describe for the people who are listening, in under order number 11, what might a basketball or a wrestling practice look like? How often might they be practicing, and where are their practices? Just a little bit of information, Mr. Carr, from you to make sure that everybody understands what this will look and feel like for kids.
Sure, thank you. Cheer and Palm are the other 2 sports, Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you very much.
No problem. So sports will definitely, when we start on the 4th, look very, very different because of the requirements of order number 11. With order number 11, the 2 biggest things are masking and 6 feet of spacing. So things definitely will look different. The competition part, we will not be able to start live competition even in practice. So the start of the season will definitely look different and be more skills and drills while we maintain those 6 feet of distance. So that's one of the things that will look very different, just like the classroom.
Yes. Thank you. And then I think the second part of emergency order number 11 that is highly influential is the part of the order that Mr. Carr just referred to that prohibits competition within the county. And as a matter of fact, they have said a couple of things about it, public health said. And the first was back in emergency order number 10, when they first put out, or actually it might have been 9, when they first put out the restrictions related to competition. And what they said was that they don't have the authority to tell people they can't leave the county, but they strongly urge people not to do so, because they believe that overall, people leaving the county to do whatever it is that they wanted to do that wasn't allowed within the county has been something that has contributed to spread. Their second part was related to their updated school guidance, because a really common question that people asked was, why can you allow students to be in the classroom, but they still can't play in athletic competitions? And what was stated from public health is that sports are very different from what's happening in the classroom, because people are much more likely to be within 6 feet of one another and breathing heavily. So that is the advice, or excuse me, the order that public health has put out. Remember, it's an order, it's not recommendation, it's not a guidance, it's a public health order. However, this is a very, very complex piece, right? And there are a lot of parts, and mostly it's about our students and what's best for our kids, for the safety of our kids, for the safety of our school community. And we know how much our students, how much this means to them. So we're continuing to learn as much as we can about what we should do related to competition, because we know that there are area school districts who are making decisions right now. So yesterday, as part of the medical working group, we asked them very specifically, pull up the question so I can read it myself here. Under emergency order number 11, this is the question posed to the group. Public Health Madison-Dane County does not allow competition for medium and high-risk sports. It does, however, allow for practices in static groups of 10 with masks, 6 feet of physical distance, and other safety precautions. OSD winter athletic practices start on January 4th. Other than the Public Health Madison-Dane County order, what considerations or research should the OSD take into account when making decisions about when it is safe to schedule athletic competitions? So that is the question that we posed to the medical working group. And the medical working group, as I mentioned previously tonight, had been separated into 2 groups to allow for all members to have the opportunity to talk about each of the questions. And in one of the groups, it was unanimous support for adhering to the public health order and not competing outside of the county, or adhering to the intent of the order. In the other group, it was discussed slightly more indirectly. However, members of that group spoke about how important athletics is to children and their development. And that's an absolute strong feeling, I think, shared by everybody. And other sentiments were shared related to how starting school needs to be the priority, needs to be the safety priority. So overall, when putting the feelings of both groups together, I would say that the medical working group overall was, not to a person, was supportive of not at this time when the emergency order is in place, not competing outside of the county. However, as an administrative team, we don't want to create a path forward that conflicts with public health when we want to compete, and we will compete when the order is lifted, which could be as early as January 13th. And Mr. Carr is in daily contact with other athletic directors from the area, the county, and beyond, and is creating schedules to implement as soon as that order is lifted. And we are continuously learning more and continuously monitoring what's happening related to research about sports and transmission. And so we will revisit this topic of competition at the January 11th board meeting because the people who are writing in are absolutely right. We don't know whether or not the order will be extended. Consequently, this is something that needs to continuously be revisited. So for right now, we are not competing outside of the county until the order is lifted. And we're hoping that that is as early as January 13th. The schedules will be ready to go so that when the order is lifted, we start to compete, because we know how much that means to our students. Meanwhile, we are continuously learning and gathering information, because we want to make sure that we are making the best possible decision for our students and our school safety, our community safety, our student safety. So that is a multifaceted update, as it includes what we plan to do for phasing in our students to in-person instruction, the work of the medical working group, and the path forward thus far for winter athletics.
Thank you, Leslie. We'll work through our normal progression as we've done before with these presentations, and go from board member to board member to ask questions and to comment and give feedback to Leslie. And I'm going to go through this kind of in a seniority fashion. So Heather, you're up first, and then Kevin. questions or comments for Leslie?
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. That's a lot of information to put together in 8 days, so I appreciate that. I just had a couple of questions. One of them I should probably know, but admittedly I got a little lost. In the flipped model of high school, will students be eating lunch at the school?
That's a great question. No, the actual instructional day will end at 12:30 and students will have an option to take a grab and go lunch with them at the time.
Got it. Thank you. I figured that they weren't, but I just wanted to confirm because you didn't mention it. So I figured that that was not the case. And then the other question I had is related to the last topic of sports. Can you speak to a little bit about student clubs or theater or, I was in sports, but also in, choir. So they have state singing competitions. Like what is going on with the
Right.
kind of the other extracurriculars?
Great question. So right now, I think I've mentioned it before. Our drama club put on the virtual play.
Yeah.
Club.
Yep.
But right now, and all of our clubs at the high school are up and running, other than the ones that you simply can't, like community service clubs. We can't do that right now. But everything else is up and running in a virtual fashion. Now, will we be able to transition to in-person if we're adhering to all the safety requirements? If we're adhering to the safety requirements, yes, we would. Now, related to music and competitions, it's still pretty complex because, singing is one of those things that is still considered not a very safe thing to do indoors. Consequently, there is a lot of discussion on music at the middle level being a combination of virtual and I would say instruction on musical theory, as opposed to in-person playing of instruments. Now, for things like competitions for solo ensembles, etc., I believe they are virtual this year, but Mr. Pliner, if you know more and would like to comment on that, I know that our music teachers have, or Dr. Anderson too, our music teachers have discussed it, I just can't recall.
There are two rounds of solo ensemble, and they are both virtual this year. And we've got
Thank you. I was
participating, right?
Got it. I was aging myself because I couldn't remember the word solo and ensemble. Thank you. Those are the only questions that I had. Thanks very much.
Kevin, and then Anna, you're next.
Okay, got a lot of things here to share and questions to ask. First of all, as I stated at the last board meeting, I've asked a lot of questions of the flip plan. I made it known that I'm not a huge fan of going back to school just 8 hours a week. I feel like if you're going to be back in school, you should be there for the full day at least. I think the current plan leads to too much more screen time than we already have in terms of asynchronous learning. And when the kids are in school, we take the time to get them there and get them there safely. They should be spending more time with their teachers with actual live teaching. So I've made that known, and we decided, I guess, to move on. But it's really hard too for the parents to plan from a erratic schedule perspective. And yeah, I just think more time when you're gonna, and also for the bus complications. I mean, if you're gonna have kids on the bus, have them be there for the full day and have their fellow students who are not there live with them learning live through live streaming. So that's the first kind of comment. I want to go back to, I participated and listened into the medical advisory board yesterday, and just the 4 points that were made, Leslie. First of all, that, in terms of being prudent to go back on January 19th, I think that makes a lot of sense with the 14 days and incubation period and what have you. When it's appropriate to close the classroom, of course, we've got some guidance from Dane County on that. Consistency is key, and that's what we heard from the medical advisory board. It's not good for kids to be going in and out of these models. The minimum amount of time between phased approaches, I don't know that there was any kind of clear consensus from what I heard yesterday. I guess that kind of leads me to a question. If our 7th and 8th graders and then our 9th through 12th graders are in separate schools, why do we have to wait till February 8th when we could start everyone on January 19th? They're in separate schools. So besides potential busing issues, which I understand, if we challenge parents to get their kids there by other means, I guess I don't understand why we can't start everyone on January 19th.
Sure. And I don't think it's really as much of a busing issue as it is testing our system issue and ensuring that we have brought in on January 19th, we'll be bringing in additional 4 grades of students, ensuring that we have all the class coverage that we need, the contact tracing that we need is there. And the safety procedures that we're putting into place are working, and we're not causing a negative impact on anything that's happening within the school community or broader. So I think just giving ourselves 2 weeks to ensure that everything is working in proper order before we bring in 6 more grades just seemed like a wise choice as opposed to trying to do it all at one time.
But you have an awful lot of dedicated resources in those other schools, right, that aren't impacted by what's happening in K through 6.
When you say I'm sorry, I don't know.
You have resources that are dedicated to a certain school, so I don't understand why they'd be impacted by. So of course the teachers and the administrators that are directly involved with K through 6 are going to be impacted by the startup and learning, etc. But my point is the people in 7th and 8th in the middle school and the high school, they're not being impacted by that necessarily. So that's why I'm having a problem understanding the additional days, I guess 20 days almost.
It's not that many school days. that would be
Right, I mean,
distressing to me too. So fewer school days. That's absolutely right. It's really just to make sure that we have the system capacity, and what changes do we need to make before we add in thousands more students to the system. And really, I think 2 weeks to evaluate that doesn't seem like an inordinate amount of time. So that's really what it's about. Is our system, will we need more? And it isn't just school-based because things like substitutes and contact tracers cover multiple schools. So while I do think our planning will be adequate, and I do believe we will have what we need until we add in those additional 4 grades and watch it all play out, we can't be sure. And when it comes to health and safety, we need to be sure. And that's why we want to see it happen with the first 4 grades before we add in the next 6.
Okay, so I'm glad Heather asked a question about other extracurriculars. Obviously, the focus often is on sports. There's a lot of people, a lot of kids that are participating in sports, so it makes sense that happens. But understanding, I know virtual things have occurred, what have you, but debate, chess club, etc., this is hard to do virtually. And I just hope that we're paying the same amount of attention to getting these kids, whether it's debating in a mock trial situation or what have you, that that type of experience can be much more effective in person, and it can be done safely with all the precautions taken, masks, etc. So it sounds like there's been focus on that.
Yes.
Okay. In terms of the sporting topic, this is a topic that's near and dear to me. I've been involved in youth basketball, especially very intensely in Oregon for many years. I've been coaching in many different sports, and we all know, and you've heard the letters tonight about the importance, obviously, of the physical and mental aspect of sports and competing and setting goals and achieving goals. So I think we all are in agreement with that. I guess I wonder what our approach will be if, in my opinion, it'll be a strong likelihood that on January 13th that Dane County will not change their position. Then what's our approach going to be? I mean, just sitting and waiting for January 13th, I don't know that that's the best strategy necessarily. And as many letters have said that have come in, and as we've all seen, both in the fall season, now in the winter season around the state, teams have been competing, doing it successfully within our own, right outside our county. I mean, all the examples that have been used, and we've all seen examples of school districts even bigger than ours that are even in our conference that are already planning for competition outside of Dane County. So, I mean, I was in one of the cohorts yesterday. I understand that the cohort I wasn't in made it pretty clear that their advice was not to compete out of Dane County. I did not hear that same level of conviction by any stretch in the cohort I listened into. So I just wonder what we're going to be able to do, or what we would be willing to do when we get to January 13th if that order is not lifted, which I personally don't expect it to be lifted.
Well, as an administrative team right now, we're saying that with the guidance from public health, with the input from the medical working group, that we would make the suggestion to play outside of the county and be contrary to the public health order. That's not where we would go, unless, of course, there was new information or new research that was introduced in the next couple of weeks that would make us think differently about that. So what I'm hoping, of course, we're all hoping that our students are allowed an opportunity to play in a way that is deemed safe and within within the teams that are within our county, as well as some that aren't, because we'll probably be putting together a pretty interesting schedule filled with lots of different schools, perhaps some that we haven't even played before, given all of the oddities around this situation. But when public health is saying don't do it, and our medical working group is saying follow public health, as an administrative team, unless there's new information, I don't see us making a recommendation that would be to put our kids on buses and go outside of the county. Now,
Yeah, I guess one last comment I'd make on this whole topic is the fact of the matter is high numbers of our athletes are competing outside of Dane County now in their clubs team and even teams organized by parents. I was watching one on Facebook tonight. So it looks like they're taking all the precautions necessary. It's happened a lot in the Dells and other areas outside of Dane County. And I would hope, and I'm confident that we could provide a more structured and even safer environment than what's happening right now. And so I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, that athletes are going to compete and they're going to go outside of Dane County and do it outside of our district like they're doing now. And we have the opportunity to provide them a safer and more structured experience, frankly. So yeah, I think it's about giving choices, but that's my comments. Thanks, Leslie, for all the hard work for you and the administration.
thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Anna, and then Tim.
Thanks, Steve. I guess I just wanted to ask a few questions. From what you explained, Leslie, it sounds like the split between the phased restart and the Oregon Online, based on the most recent survey, is very similar to the breakdown that we had. So from a capacity perspective of the teachers that are devoted to the online, that's going to work out well, and that we are seeing a similar trend as far as overall percentage. There may have been some shifting of people, but overall similar percentages. Is that correct?
That's mm-hmm.
And then as far as the phased in approach, from what I'm hearing is that the phased in really is just that gap between the K through 6 January 19 timeframe and the 7 through 12. Now, I guess I do have a question. Starting like on January 4, when it's returned to school, will K through 2 still be in person at that point?
Yes.
Okay, so K through 2 will continue with their same in-person half day, and then really on the 19th would be bringing back our 3rd through 6th,
Yes.
and then in February 7 through 12.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I have a full understanding of that. I am, I think it makes sense to have the phased in approach following the guidelines and the recommendation of how to bring kids back in. I think it makes a lot of sense to make sure that we have a good system in place for bringing back our 3 through 6, and then making sure that we're prepared for that next wave of bringing students back. So I think that does make sense. I do also agree with following the public health guidance on as it relates to winter sports. I'm really happy that we're going to be able to get students back in to start practices. You can do a lot of team building. You can develop those, connections and relationships amongst your teammates. And let's really hope that as a community and throughout our state, we can continue to see the numbers decline and reach a point where it's going to be I guess, safer to have competition and to be able to reduce that exposure and focus on keeping our schools open, focusing on getting that educational piece in person and helping to get students back into our schools. I think that's the priority. And I support the administration's approach on how you're handling that. It's not an easy decision. And I know that it's hard for a lot of student athletes and families to not have that opportunity. And so it's not easy, but I think it's prudent and I think it makes a lot of sense. And those really are my comments.
Tim and then Troy.
So yeah, I've got just a few questions. Mike, you mentioned that there are a number of other schools in the county that have approved competition outside of competing outside of Dane County. Marshall, DeForest, you didn't mention these schools, but a number of people who have written in mentioned Marshall, DeForest, Wanakee, and Edgewood have all approved competing outside of the county. Do you, in talking with the other ADs, those specifically in some of those schools, what's driving their decisions? Do you know?
I don't know specifics because each district is different. They're making their decisions based on different suggestions or different information. I think what people need to realize is most of the districts that have changed to outside the county have done so recently, as recent as in the last 24 hours.
Right. So I was just wondering if you've talked to any of them as they started changing, just to get an understanding of, hey, why are you changing? Why are you going against Dane County's recommendation?
I can find out that information for you.
I think that would be super helpful. Leslie, you mentioned that the staffing issue, substitutes, we have just naturally, it's that time of year where, our teachers are getting sick, our substitutes are getting sick. We have a very shallow pool of substitutes, without question, a fraction of what we usually have. Are we in a position where we're able to ask parents of kids who are in a particular classroom to help out in that classroom? Whether it be, if a teacher is out, can we ask parents to step in for the day or 2 days to be the in-person presence while synchronous learning can happen if a teacher has tested positive, for instance, but isn't feeling isn't getting the symptoms? Can we ask parents of kids in that class to help out?
To be a substitute, because that's basically what it is. You have to be able to be in the school or in the classroom acting as a substitute. You have to have a specific license and take a training course. So it's not something that a volunteer could do on his or her own. Plus, anytime you're in a classroom, there's confidential information that needs to be shared with the person who is supervising related to IEPs, connected to behavioral needs, etc. So it really does need to be somebody with an employee-employer relationship with the school district.
Okay, but I would imagine there are other activities that can happen with the help of those parents and that are outside of the classroom. And will we be in a position to ask for that kind of help if we need it?
Absolutely. Our parents have been wonderful, related to all kinds of help. And a lot of it is connected to the great work of our PTOs and the way that they have been pitching in to ensure that all of the student needs are getting met, as well as supporting the teachers in this difficult time. So thus far, our parent volunteers have been fantastic. And I'm sure we'll be able to find more ways to utilize the really generous people who want to do something helpful in this difficult situation.
I think that's a great opportunity for the community, without question. We're getting notifications every few days. We got a couple of them today that either a teacher tested positive or that a student tested positive in a particular school.
Yes.
are we running, and very typically, in fact, rarely do I see close contacts. I typically see contract tracing took place. There were no close contacts.
That's right.
Can I assume then that they inherited the virus from someplace other than school if there are no close contacts
Yeah.
from school or from teachers?
Yeah, thus far, we have no evidence of transmission within the school. So usually when it's for in every incident that we know of thus far, a student who is COVID positive or a staff member has been exposed outside of school. And part of the reason there are no close contacts is that we are keeping the 6 feet of distance between our students. If we didn't have that 6 feet, anybody who was within that range of the student who was positive would need to be quarantined. So the 6 feet is one of the reasons we've been able to maintain consistency for our K2 students and not have a lot of ins and outs due to quarantines of close contacts at school.
So I'm hoping that the protocols that we have in place are bringing an elevated level of confidence to our families out there who are getting ready to send their kids to in-person school for the first time in some time. I think that's great. And I think we need to publicize that more, that we have not had ever yet an in-school transmission take place.
To the best of your knowledge, yes.
To the best of my knowledge, that's exactly right. And then lastly, a number of surveys went out over the last couple of weeks. And I know one of those surveys was, and I'll paraphrase, do you want to be in person or virtual?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we set that survey aside, were there other surveys that went out? And if there were, can you just reflect on what the survey was and what kind of responses you received?
Sure. Within the last month, we've sent out a family survey to all of our the families in the district. We've surveyed all of our students grades 5 through 12, and we surveyed our staff. So we've done some comparisons between the groups related to the questions that were in common, and found the places where everyone was in agreement, how sometimes perspectives of students and parents differed. And we've highlighted some of those things in past presentations. But those 3 surveys were critical to understanding how people were perceiving and how they were feeling about the current mode of instruction and what they wanted to see happen next.
And I know that we covered the family surveys. So reflecting back, I know we covered the family surveys. And again, the other survey was, will your student be coming in person or virtually? What about the staff survey? What can you tell us about the staff survey?
Sure. We asked, and we reported on this a little bit last time, just to make sure if people are thinking, didn't she say this? I said a little bit about it, so I'll definitely repeat some of that. And that was, we asked our staff members what they felt was working really well related to online learning. What are the challenges that they see students facing every day? And then what we could do to better support them. And those were the 3 main open-ended questions that we were able to analyze and better understand how students or how our staff were seeing the situation. And the positives were extraordinarily similar to the positives that the students and the families saw. So everybody was acknowledging the same level of positives. And honestly, the challenges were very similar too. I think teachers have very similar feelings. They worry about too much screen time. The same thing, because if you remember, many of our staff members are also parents of the students in our district. And so it's not at all surprising that concerns align. And that as far as more support, teachers had lots of really good ideas about support. And honestly, for teachers at this time, support often comes down to time. How can you give us more time to do the work we need to do?
Got it. Okay. Any other surveys? That was all of them, right?
Then
I know that's a lot.
There was a screener, emotional behavioral health screener that went to parents of students in grade 3 as a way to monitor the health of the students in that grade. And we will definitely be expanding based on that experience. So that's what we have so far.
Great. Again, there's Krista and I have been in lots of meetings,
I know.
not just board meetings, but the medical task force meetings, and many other board members have joined us in those as well. And we are experiencing a fraction of what you're experiencing, and the teachers and everybody in administration are experiencing. And so it seems overwhelming to me. And again, I'm experiencing a fraction of what you are. So I really have to hand it to you for your resilience and your ability to digest all of this, because it is a lot. So thank you.
It is a lot. And thank you for asking about those surveys, because honestly, it does not hurt ever to bring up what people are thinking and feeling about the experience that they've just had and are continuing to have. So thank you.
That's it, Steve.
Thank you, Tim. Troy and then Krista.
Okay, just a couple of things on the school piece. So February 8th, I was pleased with that date. I have to say it was earlier than I expected. However, I think that really correlates well with the discussion that I heard last night at the medical advisory board discussion in terms of the banding between, or the phasing between bringing groups in. So I just wanted to clarify a couple things, and because I may have tuned out a little bit, but I think I heard you say that 25% are going to remain online, and that was for the 3-6 grade bands?
That was overall.
Oh, okay. But the high school, we had about 100 students moving to Oregon Online from phase restart.
We did. Overall, as a district, our numbers stayed very similar. As a matter of fact, I think there's only a difference of 13 more people in online second semester than first semester. So as a district, we stayed fairly even. However, the majority of the switches to online seem to have occurred at the secondary level, about 50 or so at the middle school and over 100 at the high school.
Okay. And do you know, and it's difficult to answer, but do we have any understanding of why? Is it safety concerns? Is it simply that maybe the virtual environment is working better for certain students? Or, I mean, was there that type of feedback that we could digest at all?
There wasn't on that particular survey. So anything I would share would be anecdotal. Because, for instance, in a meeting I had with some teachers today, they spoke about the fact that some of their kids were performing better than they've ever performed, and that this particular mode of education really suited them. And so I think some of our older learners are finding that virtual instruction, there are some benefits that they're seeing and that they're enjoying at the moment. Now, I don't know if that's what they'll want forever, but for now, they feel like it is suiting them well. And I think that's probably what is constituting the majority of the decisions to move to all online.
Mm-hmm. Which would correlate, I think, with the numbers that you stated at the secondary level, that we have more moving to online versus the younger grades. It may have been going in the reverse.
Yeah.
Okay, good. The next thing, I just point of emphasis, following up on Tim's comment about the, we get the emails saying that the student was tested when there was no close contact, and I guess I just want to emphasize what I heard you say is that at the secondary levels at OMS and OHS, it's going to be a much different environment, because we are going to have students passing in the hallways and changing classes. We're going to have larger groups of students versus the smaller cohorts that we have at the younger grade levels. And so I guess I just want to make a point of emphasis that we've kind of become conditioned to those emails reading that there were no close contact. But as we get past February 8th, there may be a higher probability that we will not be able to say that when we have cases in the school.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's a very good point to underscore. And that is, while we will of course be working to enforce all safety precautions, because students aren't static, it's highly likely that there would be close contacts with a student in the secondary schools who was positive for COVID.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. And then I had some questions about the marginalized students and potentially bringing in seniors first or ninth graders first, seventh graders first. And I think you covered that well. You discussed all of the transitions and the supports that we have. And so I think I'm comfortable with the direction that we're going there in terms of kind of sticking with those phasing, understanding that we have those additional supports in place for those transitions. So that's all I had on the schooling piece of it. On the sports, I guess a couple of questions. So do we or will we officially have competitions scheduled starting on, say, January 14th?
Yes, that is our goal. That's what Mr. Carr has been working on, and he's already been in contact with other athletic directors on that subject.
Okay. And do we know, will those be outside of Dane County? Inside both?
It'll depend on what the order says. But you know, we could make a schedule just with in-county schools. Honestly, with the number of in-county schools that are looking to put together games as soon as it's allowed, we could have a full schedule just with that. But could we have out-of-county competitions? Absolutely, if that is what is allowed in the order.
Mm-hmm. So I guess it's sounding like we don't have those games scheduled at this point then, officially. We don't know whether they're in or out.
It's all been about conversations with the athletic directors. So they know that we are looking to put together a schedule, and they're doing the same thing because everybody's in a many districts are in a very similar boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have, Troy, we have skeleton schedules, you know.
Okay. Okay. And is that both in and out of Dane County?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess kind of going to Kevin's point, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about this afternoon. I've reread the emails that we've received, and I've actually, I think I've come to a different position than where I was when I started. And I mean, a couple of things, a couple of notes, just kind of pointing out where my position is. I mean, one thing I've put a lot of emphasis on is that as I watched Dr. Joseph Allen's discussion with the Dane County group a few weeks ago, he was strongly pointing to intramural sports and containing competitions and athletic events to the school community. And, you know, I understand that and I get that, but on the other hand, the reality is that our student athletes are competing. I mean, you know, Kevin mentioned it, there's a competition going on tonight between Oregon and Verona basketball. And I think we just really have to understand that that's the reality. And, you know, to me, I think we have to balance what is, you know, what's safer. Is it safer to let our students go and do this on their own, parents doing it, or is it better to be a school sanctioned event that has safety measures in place? And, you know, we can't control what individuals do on their own time, but we can control, you know, what we offer students. And I'll just restate it. I mean, we believe in whole child, and athletics are a big part of whole child, and competitions are a big part of athletics. And so I guess I'm not asking for an answer to this right now, but I'm hoping that we can look ahead to what would happen if that order is extended or it would not allow us to compete after January 14th. And I'd like us to be looking at what we could do if we need to. And the main question I guess I have is that, you know, as a district, we need to exercise due care to limit our liability to our taxpayers. And is there a way to establish a waiver of liability for our athletes that would that we would need to look at to allow for those competitions to occur if that order were to remain in place?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I don't know that I need an answer to that tonight, but it's just something that over the next 3 weeks, we may want to be considering.
Thank you.
I mean, and other than that, that's basically where I'm at, where my head's at on the sports and the educational issue. So that's all I had.
Thanks, Troy. Krista?
Thanks. Some of my questions have been answered, but I'll just kind of briefly go through them. Kind of getting to Troy and Tim's point, and Tim and I have been spending a lot of quality time together lately. But just this piece that, we've had, families really want to get into school, and now that we're doing that, and now we're going to have a lot of families with trepidations. And so I think, Tim's point is a good one in terms of continuing to really focus on the efforts that we're making, communicating about the health and safety protocols, that we have really good processes in place and plans in place. And we've used them at K2, and now we're going to expand them and just continue, because I think what we heard from the medical working group too is that once you get into it, it's strong, but then there tends to be fatigue. And so just how are we going to plan to continue to strengthen that communication and really make families feel comfortable that their children are safe at school? I think the second point is, this is a dynamic plan that you've introduced, a plan that's going to happen starting January 19th and February 8th. That's going to go through June 9th, 10th, or go through summer school. And so just for everybody to know that this is the plan today, and that it's going to continue to morph. And so to be tuned in to those things, and to know that we're going to continue to move and learn things and change things to the betterment of our students and our teachers. And I guess to that point, I want to talk a little bit about and ask you to explain, I think from a high level, about why we chose Flipped Classroom 712. I think there's some misunderstandings or some misinformation, or not a recognition of, if we move to a different model, how that impacts teachers and students that are online. So if you could talk to why we chose flipped model for our best educational delivery model.
I can get that conversation started, and then I'll defer to Mr. Planner and Dr. Anderson if they'd like to add anything to it. And I think that the main point with that is that we have one staff at the secondary level, and we are asking them to teach in 2 different ways, or actually 3 different, because they will have the new content delivery in Google Classroom. They will have the teaching and learning sessions with our phased restart students, and they will have meetings with our Oregon Online students to do the same thing that the students are doing in person. They'll have those in the afternoon. So they have a lot of plates spinning in order to provide a really high quality experience. We're thinking that this is an opportunity for us to be extraordinarily responsive to our kids, because they'll be able to access content and then come in and work in small groups with teachers to be able to better understand that information, which means there is teaching that's happening during that time period. And when there's teaching, there is learning. So that is a very, very valuable time where they're able to do a lot of higher level thinking skills connected to the learning that they're doing outside of the classroom. And then our Oregon Online students will have their opportunity to do the exact same thing in a virtual manner. So we selected this because of the ability to be responsive, because it provides this opportunity to have a high quality experience in a smaller setting, in a personalized way, with responsive instruction. And so I would say, Jim or Shannon, if you'd like to add anything to that, now's your time.
Leslie, I think you did a great job at capturing a lot of it. Krista, you had also said that, we have a plan that continues to morph, and you're exactly right. And that boils right down to the instructional experiences that kids and teachers are able to create in the classroom. We wanted to lean on flipped instruction because we know we've learned so much about how to leverage it and to continue to keep coherent instructional experiences for kids in the classroom. But there are times where we may utilize some concurrent instructional practices from time to time. we did not want to lean on that as our model in whole because it lowers the bar and it makes us vulnerable when we have staffing issues. So we are going to use that Google Classroom. We've said that since late July when we knew what we were going to be doing throughout the year. That will be a consistent. Our students, we've overemphasized that, Krista, in trying to explain that model, and people were under the misperception that there wouldn't be live instruction. That is not the case whatsoever. So those instructional experiences in-house will be very important, high leverage, and will be really about helping students master the essential learning standards and content that is a part of the curriculum.
And isn't it true, Jim and Shannon, you can weigh into it, that in this model, whether you're online or in person, you are getting dedicated teacher time?
No question. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Shannon?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing this is a question that I've received a lot in the last 2 weeks as families been making their decisions. A lot of families who wanted to do the online model were really concerned they were going to lose Oregon teachers in the process. It was really important to families that they got to keep their Oregon teachers and their Oregon curriculum. And so a lot of the schools that we looked at who were moving to a full day model, they were outsourcing the online. I spoke to one colleague today in another district, and their approach is to outsource to an out-of-state curriculum vendor. And they're getting a lot of pushback from their community because they don't want to lose that connection with their home district. And so that's one piece of the puzzle that we chose from the start, was to keep our educators with our kids.
And can you also speak to, does this model also help you identify more readily kids that are struggling, or kids that you maybe need to involve student services from that perspective? Does it do you feel like your teachers are having more opportunity to make connections to really see where students are struggling?
We anticipate that that's going to be one of the strengths of this model, because a teacher will have in an in-person cohort 8 to 10 kids for 50 minutes. And so they're going to really be able to spend a lot closer time with those students. And even when students are in the online model in the afternoons, they're going to be in much smaller groups. Right now, they have 28 kids in a Google Meet, and I've been in a lot of observations, and our teachers are doing a fantastic job of noticing like who's engaged, who's on task, who's participating. But I think we'll find that when they're in much smaller groups, they're going to be able to really focus in and provide more support and more quickly identify who's struggling and who needs additional support.
Great, thank you. Leslie, did you want to add anything else, or?
No, I
Okay.
think as long as it answered your question.
Yeah,
then
it did. And so I guess I want to turn to athletics. I feel for these kids. I think back to my high school years, and athletics are some of my favorite memories. And so I want to be sure that if kids are listening, or their parents, that we're not saying no to competition. We're not saying never. We're just saying not yet. And so we have every intention for our high school kids to have experience in competitions this winter season. And so I guess turning to that is one point I'd like to make is that we did hear, or we have heard from parents, that they would like competitions to start right on January 4th. And so Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever we start any season with the WIAA, don't they mandate a period of practice first before you start a competition? So for example, if we were in a normal year, boys basketball would start practice on November 23rd, but they would not be allowed a competition until December 1st. And that's for health and safety reasons and getting kids' bodies ready for competition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we are not doing anything out of the norm that is a health and safety practice of you practice first and there's a period of wait before you have competition. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then I guess, piggybacking on Troy's comment is, can we start to look a little creatively about this as we wait for a January 13th in terms of, are there conversations available to be had with Dane County Public Health that we say, can we form a Dane County bubble? That you've got these schools that have been in this bubble of these health requirements. So we know, in theory, And so does that impact a health order lift or impact our ability to have conversation if we're saying, let us start with Dane County schools? I'm just throwing ideas, but can we start to think a little creatively and help Dane County Public Health thinking, to Troy's point of students already having competitions? Aren't we better off from a public health perspective having them competing against each other given our protocols that we follow as school districts than versus an AAU or something like that? So I'm kind of taking Troy's point and trying to marry public health thinking
Yes.
to impact saying, here's the reality of the situation, because Dane County Public Health has actually made that change by getting away with metrics because he saw how the actual world was working. And so can we provide that view to them about how the actual athletic world is working right now? And they may be better off from a public health perspective to say, let's make this decision because it is actually doing us a better service in public health by controlling it.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, those conversations have started and they will continue.
Okay.
Because that is a really valid point. And it's something that we as superintendents would express. And I'm sure that Mike has had those conversations in his weekly meetings with public health also.
Yeah. And just that they've kind of set this precedent here of what they've learned and what they understand public behavior to be and how they can impact that in a positive way. So I think it's just, tweaking it and thinking a little bit differently so we can all get to this place that we want to be, given everybody agrees with the thinking, right?
Yes.
Based on reality. So I guess that would be my point about athletics, that the community knows that we are understanding how important that is. We've had youth sports and athletic task forces. We understand as part of Whole Child that athletics is a huge part of that, and that we're thinking differently and pushing a little bit the thinking associated with that. So that's all for me. Thank you.
I just want to feedback on that with the sports stuff in terms of a process go forward. Because what I've heard is that even if we wanted to, we couldn't get into competition until sometime later in the week of January 11th, is what I'm hearing. Is that accurate? Yeah, I mean, that would be the opportunity to do that. When's our next medical advisory group meeting?
January 4th.
Okay. And when's the metrics gonna expire, or the public health order? When is that set to expire?
January 13th.
Okay, so it expires before we could even go back to play. And I thought I heard Mike say that he's developing skeleton schedules for both inside and outside Dane County
Yes.
program. And I think what I heard you say was that you're going to be doing work to revisit that issue of competition for sports between now and then. Yeah.
We all want that for our kids. We want it for our kids. We just have to continue to be open to new information as it's coming in to make decisions well.
Right. I had 3 daughters who played athletics at Oregon. I played 3 sports at Oregon and ran youth baseball for 12 years. So I get it as much as anybody does. And what I'm suggesting is that, this is a dynamic process, and that we come to the meeting on the 11th, you're going to have more information. I really like what Krista said about talking with public health and Mike working with the Dane County folks and outside of Dane counties, and seeing what other folks are doing and how they're doing it, and then working with the advisory board and coming to the 11th. When we get to the 11th, you're going to have way more information on the sports thing. I think we'll be in a better place to know where we're at, but we'll also have the ability to, if we've got schedules in place, to say yes or no. You can say yes or no to one path or another on that date, and we're not missing any competition dates by waiting for that period of time, is what I'm hearing. I mean, so, one of the things we look at is by waiting to gather more information, are we going to prejudice the ability to get in early for competitions? It doesn't sound like that's going to happen. That no matter which way we go on the 11th, we'll have the ability to move in that direction in terms of competition. So to me, it makes some sense to wait till we gather that information, to have those hard conversations and get there with it.
Mhm.
I think the questions that Troy asked about, is it better policy if people are really going outside and we know that's happening? Do we face that reality and bring it in-house and control it from our end? That resonates with me, but it also resonates with me that if public health of Dane County and Madison is saying, we don't want you to keep meat in the county, then don't go out. I mean, those are conflicting things that I think we need some time to process and think about. And if we can do that by the 11th and not prejudice our ability to schedule and play games, that makes sense to me from a process standpoint. Okay. I know things are moving pretty fast, and I as much as I care about sports, I was really, we really needed to get that phase in with school done, and that's where your efforts have been directed. And so I think we need to spend a little more time on the sports thing too, as it's developing, right, to get information.
Steve, I guess the other thing I would say too is that, which you probably have already worked on, Mike, is that we're ready with the protocols, whether, I know what a lot of communities are doing is no parents, no spectators, no locker rooms, those sorts of things. So that would be good to see that part of the plan as well as a board.
Those
Thank you.
protocols are done.
So let me turn real quickly to the phase-in thing. Thank you so much for all the work. I tend to look as a board member long-term, and when we started in this path last spring, when schools closed, we had the phased restart kind of in mind, and you rolled that out in August. And if you look back at the presentations from then to where we're at now, I mean, you've done exactly what you said you were going to do, and we're headed in that path. Not only have you done that in terms of a timing standpoint, but also there are a ton of details that got to get sorted out, and we're ready to go, and we're doing that. And just the length of your presentation where you summarizes it informs us as to how much behind the scenes work has gone into that. So I hope the community appreciates that. And I think everybody recognizes that as we're in this transition, it's not perfect because we're learning from it as we go. And we're learning a lot about education and how to educate our kids. I had that conversation with an educator today who was saying that it's unbelievable how kids are prospering. Some kids are prospering in this system where they were not in the traditional classroom setting. So we've got a lot to learn about that. And I'll emphasize another point that one of the board members made, that this is a dynamic and not static process. This is another phase of the transition, and there are going to be bumps in the road, and it's not going to be perfect. But thanks for all the work in getting us to this point. This is frankly earlier than I thought we would be back in school in terms of the dates. That's the end of my comments and questions. Did that trigger, I'm going to go through once more any other questions or comments from any board member to leave Leslie, and I'll go in reverse order. Krista, anything? Troy, we good? Tim?
No, nothing for me.
Okay, Anna, I want to make sure everybody's got a chance to.
I would say that I definitely support the idea of what both Troy and Krista kind of mentioned is, looking at how we can combine the safety protocols that have been required within the county with the potential of maybe allowing those competitions within county. I think that's a great suggestion, and I would support having that conversation and kind of pushing on public health to acknowledge that. I think that's a good point. So I think I would I agree with that approach.
Sorry, I had to mute because there was an Amazon Prime driving up with Christmas presents and our dog was barking. So, Kevin.
Yeah, I want to echo what Anna was just saying, that Krista's suggestion would certainly be innovative. So it would be great to get that suggestion to public health as a a modification maybe, or a consideration to take, when we get to that date. I guess the one thing I'd say, I know we're spending a lot of time talking about sports, but the one thing that I would say is I don't know how fair it is to Mike and the coaches I don't know how you can logistically plan 2 schedules. I don't know, it's a fair ask. I mean, at the end of the day, we as a board have to decide, and frankly, we should be voting on the scenarios that will happen after the 12th at midnight when that expires. And either they're going to extend it or they're going to cancel like they did with their metrics. And they can't compete anyways, per Krista's point. I think it's 2 weeks or whatever from the 4th when they start practicing. So there's a period of time, but the window closes in terms of the time for us to put a competitive schedule together and one that's fair, that we're not playing schools that are much bigger than us as well, right? And I'm just trying to make the point that it's difficult to ask Mike and the coaches to, in essence, kind of tentatively plan 2 schedules. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Tell a school I'll be there on the 20th, maybe or maybe not, depending on how the ruling goes. I just think we need to be realistic about what we're asking, and I think we need to be prepared, probably the day after, to have a meeting to give them direction on what they can do if we're not going to allow them to compete outside Dane County, because that's the only fair thing for them. I mean.
Thanks. Anything, Kevin, anything else?
Nope. Thank you.
Okay. Heather?
Yep, I will jump on board and also say that I think Krista's idea was really excellent, and would be supportive of that. But otherwise, I'm set.
All right. Dr. Bergstrom, anything else from you on our opening information item?
No, I just appreciate all of the input. And I know that there are a lot of difficult decisions to be made, and certainly winter athletics has had a number of difficult decisions attached to it. And I think we're continuing to learn and evolve. And I think that the next couple of weeks will tell us a lot.
Okay. Thanks. That completes our discussion on our agenda. The board is going to be moving into closed session to consider employment promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which we have jurisdiction or exercise responsibility, and that would be finalizing our process for the evaluation of Dr. Bergstrom, and that would be under Wisconsin Statute 1985-1C. We're not going to return to open session. So I would need a motion to go into close. Well, before we get the motion, just one point. I went out for a walk before the meeting because I was Zooming all day, and saw Jupiter and Saturn and the convergence of stuff. And I was thinking that, nature dealt us a crappy blow this year with COVID-19 and made it a difficult year for everybody. And it struck me what nature comes up with one of these neat little sites that give you hope and some light and at the end of a really bad year. And so hopefully tonight's another step forward and progress towards seeing some light out of the COVID-19 thing. And to everybody who's been watching tonight, on behalf of the board, we want to wish you a happy and safe holiday season. And we look forward to seeing you in a brighter new year in 2021. So I would entertain a motion now to go into closed session as announced.
Tim, I move that we go into closed session.
I'll second. It's Krista.
Motion and second. Katie, would you call the roll?
Mr. LeBrun,
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan,
Yes.
Ms. Garrison,
Yes.
Mr. Maring,
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz,
Yes.
Ms. Bijak,
Yes.
Mr. Zach.
Yes, board is now in closed session. We could leave this meeting and we'll go to the link on our closed session site. Thanks, everyone.